Putting something in someone else's glass takes skill, especially if it's your own sister doing it. Veronique thought no one could see. She was standing with her back to her guests, leaning over the tray of glasses, ostensibly adjusting the napkins. But the mirror in the hallway, the same one I'd inherited from my grandmother, reflected everything in great detail. The tiny bottle that appeared in her hand, as if out of thin air. The quick, practiced movement of her wrist. A few clear drops falling silently into the champagne. And the smug smile that flashed across her perfect face. I froze in the doorway with the cake in my hands, unable to move. My first thought was, of course she's not going to poison me, it's just a joke. My second was, maybe it's a laxative to embarrass me in front of my guests? And only the third thought was correct. Why the hell would my sister even slip me anything on my birthday? Layla, where are you stuck with the cake? Veronique's voice sounded impatient, bringing me back to reality. The champagne is running out. I took a deep breath and walked out of the kitchen, keeping a smile on my face. 27 years of practicing fake smiles in front of my sister hadn't gone to waste. The cake is served. I placed it on the table decorated with wildflowers. My little whim annoying Veronique. Who puts weeds on a holiday table? She snorted, having crossed the threshold of my apartment an hour ago. 6 people gathered in my tiny living room above the flower store. Kate, a friend since college, Marcus, my supplier of exotic plants, a couple of florists I knew, and of course, Veronique and her husband Nate. He was the only one who seemed out of place in this company, a tall, broad-shouldered auto mechanic with perpetually oil-stained hands that he tried unsuccessfully to wash off. To our Layla! Veronique raised her glass, flashing a perfect smile. Here's to her small but lovely business, and her talent for seeing beauty in the most ordinary things. Small but sweet was what she always said about my store. Like it was a hobby and not a business I had dedicated 5 years of my life to. As if my success had always been something insignificant compared to her career at the ad agency. Veronique handed me a glass, the one with the gold rim, where she'd poured something. I took it, feeling my back grow cold. Thank you for the toasts. My voice sounded surprisingly firm. To all of you. Nate was standing next to me, holding the exact same glass, just without the gold rim. He smiled, raising his glass, and in that moment I made up my mind. A slight movement of his hand, as if by accident, and our glasses touched. Oh, I faked embarrassment. I think I took yours. The glasses switched, and no one noticed. No one except Veronique. Her gaze sharpened for a moment, becoming like that of a bird of prey. She saw, knew. But she remained silent, stretching her lips into a smile. I brought Nate's glass to my lips, pretending to drink. In fact, I barely took a sip, anxiety constricting my throat. What had I done? An innocent man would get hurt. But the alternative was worse. Drink poisoned champagne, or make a scene and make myself look hysterical. We all grew up in a small house on the outskirts of Bedford. I was the youngest, Veronique the oldest by 4 years. Our beautiful and clever girl, her parents said of her. And this is Layla. She's a good girl, too, they usually added later, as if apologizing. I was never bright enough, loud enough, ambitious enough. Next to a shining star named Veronique, I was a dim planet in a distant orbit. I remember my 6th birthday. My parents gave me a set of watercolors, my first serious art supplies, not children's crayons or felt-tip pens. I was thrilled. I painted all day, and by evening, I created a picture. Our house surrounded by flowers. Naive, childish, but heartfelt. Look what I've drawn, I exclaimed, running into the living room where my parents and Veronique were sitting. Very nice, dear. Mom nodded absent-mindedly, not taking her eyes off the magazine. But Veronique stood up, walked over, and picked up my drawing. Look how Layla has depicted our house, she said loudly. Notice how she's rendered the perspective. It's almost 3-dimensional. The parents broke away from their studies. Dad even put on his glasses. Very talented indeed, he said with amazement. I glowed with joy. My sister praised me. But when my parents went back to their chores, Veronique leaned over and whispered in my ear, See? Without me, no one would have noticed your talent. Remember that. She wasn't mean. She'd just learned from childhood that attention was a resource to be fought for, and she wasn't about to share it with anyone. Kate's ringing laughter brought me back to the present. She was telling a story, everyone was laughing, and I was the only one who couldn't concentrate, watching Nate. Was he looking too pale? Was he writhing in pain? We moved on to the cake. I blew out the candles to an unsteady happy birthday. Veronique insisted on cutting the cake herself. I'm better at it, she said, taking the knife from my hands. Perfect slices are my specialty. Perfect slices, the perfect job, the perfect husband, the perfect life. Veronique has always had a need for perfection and excellence. Even now, cutting my cake at my birthday party, she couldn't help but emphasize that she was doing it better than me. First slice for you, sis. She held out the plate to me. Happy birthday! I took the cake, noticing that her hands were trembling slightly. Nervous? Afraid her plan will be discovered? Or just anticipating how embarrassed I'd be if there really was laxative in the glass? Nate refused the cake. He stood at the window, leaning lightly on the sill. His face was definitely paler than usual. Is everything okay? I asked, walking over to him. Yeah, just stuffy, he tried to smile. Great party, Layla. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for coming, I stammered. Nate, are you sure you're feeling okay? A little nauseous, but it'll pass. He rubbed his temple. I guess I got stressed out at work. A difficult client, repairing an antique Ford. Nate started talking about carburetors and valves, and I nodded, not getting into the details. A strange sense of guilt kept me from concentrating. But then Nate stopped halfway through, his face contorted in pain. I'm sorry. He pressed a hand to his stomach. I have to go to the bathroom. He practically ran out of the room. Veronique gave him a worried look. What's wrong with him? She asked, coming toward me. He's hardly had anything to drink. There was genuine concern in her voice. So genuine that for a moment I doubted what I was seeing. Maybe I was just imagining things. Maybe the reflection in the mirror had deceived me. Nate didn't come back for about 10 minutes. When he finally came out of the bathroom, his face was gray and his shirt was soaked with sweat. Veronique! His voice sounded hoarse. I think we should go home. I don't feel well. What's wrong? She ran up to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Honey, you look awful. I don't know. He shook his head. My stomach. And my head. It's all floating. He didn't finish the sentence, grabbing the edge of the table. His legs gave out, and Nate would have fallen if Marcus hadn't picked him up. He needs a doctor, Marcus said. Immediately. Veronique grabbed the phone. An ambulance! I'm calling an ambulance. Panic filled the room. Kate helped put Nate on the couch. Marcus brought water, and I froze, unable to move. This is my fault. Whatever Veronique put in the glass was meant for me, and I redirected it to Nate. Veronique paced the room, calling an ambulance or leaning over her husband. Hold on, honey, they're on their way, she repeated, stroking his sweat-damp hair. Everything's going to be okay. I walked over to the couch, looking at Nate's exhausted face. His lips were blue, he was shaking, and he seemed to be struggling to stay conscious. Nate! My voice sounded strangely distant. I'm so sorry. You're sorry for what? Veronique asked sharply, raising her head. What's happening to him? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. An ambulance. 2 paramedics took a quick look at Nate and decided to hospitalize him. It looks like poisoning, one of them said, administering some kind of medication through an IV. Did he eat or drink anything unusual? No, Veronique shook her head. Just champagne and some appetizers, like the rest of us. Her gaze stayed on me for a moment, and I saw something in it that I'd never seen in my confident sister before. Fear. Pure, unconcealed fear. Nate was loaded onto a stretcher. He was conscious, but weak and disoriented. "Veronique?" he whispered, reaching out to his wife. "I'm here, honey." She squeezed his fingers. "I'm coming with you." The paramedics began to bring out the stretcher. Veronique grabbed her purse and threw on her coat. "Layla!" She turned around in the doorway. "I'm sorry about all this." There was a strange expression in her eyes, a mixture of worry, anger, and probably distrust. For a moment, I thought she wanted to add something, but then she changed her mind and hurried after the stretcher. The sound of the siren gradually dissolved into the night. The guests began to awkwardly say goodbye. The party was hopelessly ruined. Kate offered to stay and help clean up, but I declined. I needed to be alone, to process what had happened. When the door closed behind the last guest, I sank down on the couch, staring at the mess. The unfinished glasses, the uneaten cake, the crumpled napkins. My phone vibrated, a message from Veronica. "Nate's being admitted. The doctors say it's serious poisoning. I don't know when I'll be back. Talk to you later." Hospital hallways always gave me mixed feelings. The smell of antiseptic, the muffled voices, the soft lighted, all seemed both soothing and unsettling at the same time. I walked down the long hallway of the emergency room, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers tightly in my hands. Silly, perhaps, but I couldn't come empty-handed. Flowers are my way of speaking when words seem inappropriate. I didn't look my best after a sleepless night, dark circles under my eyes, a pale face, my hair disheveled and bunched up. My mind was reeling with thoughts of last night. Images from memory played over and over. Veronique dripping something into her glass, the exchange of glasses with Nate, his pale face, the siren of the ambulance. The guilt didn't let go of me for a moment. I turned the corner and froze. Veronique was sitting on a plastic chair outside the room with her arms wrapped around her head. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her designer blouse wrinkled, and her makeup smeared with tears. I'd never seen my sister like this before. She was always in control, always flawless. "Veronique?" I called out softly. She looked up, and I barely recognized her. Her face swollen with tears, her eyes red, her lips trembling. She was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "Layla!" Her voice sounded hoarse. "You came!" I didn't know what to say. "How is he?" Seemed trite. "I'm sorry." Seemed hypocritical. I just handed her the flowers. "Why?" She looked at the bouquet in bewilderment. "This isn't the time for—" I stammered. "How's Nate?" Veronique stood up abruptly, the flowers falling out of her hands onto the floor. "How is he?" Her voice rose to a half-whisper, half-whisper. "He's poisoned, Layla. Poisoned. The doctors don't know exactly what it is, but they say it's some kind of powerful toxin. He could die. Do you understand? Dead." Her words hit me like a whip. I knew Nate was sick, but I didn't realize how serious it was. But how? Why? I couldn't find the words. "That's what I wanted to know." Veronique narrowed her eyes. "Why did my husband poison himself at my sister's birthday party?" Her gaze was accusatory, but it was also clear that she was scared. My sister was afraid that I knew the truth, that I saw her put something in her glass. And she was right. "I don't know," I replied, averting my gaze. "Maybe he's allergic to something in his food." "Nate's not allergic to anything," Veronique said. "He's in perfect health. Or was. Until last night." At that moment, the door of the room opened, and out came the doctor, a young man with a tired face. "Mrs. Holt?" He turned to Veronique. "May I see you for a moment?" They stepped aside, but I could still hear bits of conversation. Serious poisoning. Unknown substance. Gastric lavage. Tests have been sent to the lab. The police might be interested." The police? Veronique shuddered at that word, and I noticed how white her fingers were clutching her purse. "Thank you, doctor." Her voice was controlled again, almost normal. "Can I see him?" "Yes, but not for long. He's very weak." The doctor looked at me. "Are you a relative?" "His wife's sister," I replied, feeling uncomfortable under his scrutinizing gaze. Okay, you can come in, but one at a time and not for long. He nodded and left down the hall. Veronique turned to me. I'll go first. Wait here. She disappeared behind the door, and I sank into a chair, picking up the scattered flowers from the floor. What am I doing here? Why did I come? What am I going to tell Nate? I'm sorry I switched glasses, but did your wife want to poison me? Absurd. It was about 20 minutes before Veronique left the room. Her face was almost normal again. She'd managed to touch up her eyes and smooth her hair. He's been asking about you, she said with a touch of irritation. He wants to talk. But don't tire him out. The doctor said he needs rest. Sure, I nodded, standing up. I'm going to the cafeteria for coffee. Veronique adjusted her blouse. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Don't be long. She left, her heels clacking on the linoleum, and I opened the door of the room carefully. Nate was lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to an IV. His usually tanned face was pale, almost gray, his eyes sunken and his lips chapped. He seemed smaller, as if the disease had physically shrunk him. Layla, he smiled weakly when he saw me. You came. How are you feeling? I stepped closer, awkwardly holding the crumpled bouquet. I've been better, he tried to joke, but he coughed. The doctors say I've been poisoned. Can you believe it? I felt the color drain from my face. Poisoned? But how? Who? That's what I wanted to ask you. His voice grew serious. Veronique wasn't herself last night. She knows something, but she won't tell me. And now she's acting like I'm Crystal. That's not like her. I was silent, not knowing what to say. Nate gestured for me to sit in the chair next to the bed. Layla, I'm not stupid. You switched glasses for a reason, he said quietly. My heart skipped a beat. What? No, I just... Don't lie, he smiled weakly. I'm not mad. I just want to know why. I lowered my eyes, feeling tears come to my throat. I saw Veronique put something in my glass. The words came out before I could think about them. I didn't know what to do. I panicked and, oh my God, Nate, I'm so sorry. I never thought it could be anything serious. I thought it was just a laxative or something. He looked at me without surprise, and that really surprised me. So Veronique was trying to poison you? His voice sounded calm, too calm. I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe she just wanted to ruin my party, make me look stupid in front of my friends. That would be just like her. Nate shook his head. No, Layla. What was in that glass was no joke. The doctor said that if the ambulance had come a half hour later, the outcome could have been different. A chill ran down my spine. Did Veronique really want to do me serious harm? It didn't make sense. But why? I whispered. What had I done to her? You're her sister, and you're living happily ever after, Nate said simply. That was enough for Veronique. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his strength. You know, I married her because she was like a hurricane bright, strong, determined, everything I never had myself. I thought a little of her radiance would rub off on me. He grinned bitterly. But you know what I've learned in these 5 years? A hurricane destroys everything in its path. I stayed silent, stunned by his candor. Nate had always seemed simple and good-natured, not inclined to deep thought. Veronique. He hesitated, searching for words. She's not what she seems in public. At home, she's different, controlling, sharp, not satisfied with anything. I can never please her, no matter what I do. Then why do you stay with her? I asked cautiously. Nate looked at his hands, the big, calloused hands from working with tools, so different from Veronique's graceful fingers. Fear, I guess, he admitted. Fear of being alone. Fear that she wouldn't just let me go. Veronique wasn't the type to lose. I understood him better than he realized. I'd been afraid to stand up to my sister my whole life, afraid of her anger, her contempt, her ability to turn any situation into a victory. But now, Nate looked at me again, his gaze hardening. Everything's different now. If she's capable of this, if she really was trying to poison you. He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he meant. It was a turning point. For him, for me, for all of us. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know. He shook his head. First, get out of here. Then, we'll see. What about you? Yeah, I stammered. What was I gonna do? Accuse my sister of trying to poison me? Tell my parents? Go to the police? I don't know, Nate. It's Veronique. She always gets away with it. Maybe it's time to change that, he said quietly. We fell silent, pondering the thought. In the silence of the room, the sound of the ivy seemed deafening. She'll be back soon, I finally said. She said she was going to get coffee. Layla! Nate grabbed my hand. His fingers were cold and weak, but his grip was surprisingly strong. Be careful. If she really did this, if she really wanted to hurt you, who knows what else she's capable of? I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. Nate was right. I'd never thought of Veronique as a truly dangerous person, but last night had changed everything. The door of the room swung open, and Veronique appeared on the doorstep with 2 cups of coffee. She looked around at the scene me, holding Nate's hand, our serious faces, and her eyes narrowed. I told you, not for long. Her voice was deceptively calm. Nate needs to rest. We were just talking, Nate replied, not letting go of my hand. Layla was worried. Of course she was worried. Veronique put her coffee on the nightstand and walked over to the bed. We all worry, especially given the circumstances. What circumstances? I asked, feeling my muscles tense up. Veronique gave me a long look. Well, the fact that my husband poisoned himself at your birthday party, Layla. That's a rather strange circumstance, don't you think? What do you mean? My voice was quieter than I wanted it to be. I mean, she crossed her arms over her chest, that the police might be interested in what exactly was in the food and drink at your party, and who had access to them. I felt the blood rush to my face. Are you accusing me of poisoning Nate? I'm not accusing anyone. Veronique shrugged with feigned indifference. Just stating the facts. Nate was poisoned. It happened at your party. Veronique. Nate's voice sounded tired. Stop it. Don't be ridiculous. Nonsense. She raised her voice. Your life is at stake, and you call it stupid? My sister didn't try to poison me, he said firmly. Veronique froze, and I saw something flash in her eyes. I thought I saw jealousy for a moment. Your sister, she almost hissed. Since when was Layla your sister? Since I married you, Nate answered calmly. That's what you call your wife's sister, isn't it? Veronique stood looking at both of us, and I could almost physically feel her fury. Then she took a deep breath, clearly trying to pull herself together. You know what, Layla? She turned to me, her voice sweet again. Why don't you go home? You look awful. I'll take care of Nate. After all, I am his wife. Normally I'd give in, apologize, and leave. But not today. Not after my own sister tried to poison me, and now she was trying to pin her husband's poisoning on me. No, the word came out before I could think about it. What? Veronique looked genuinely surprised. I said no, I repeated harder. I'll stay if Nate wants me to stay. You can't just… I can. I stood up, feeling a strange calmness come over me. And I won't let you accuse me of something I didn't do. What did you do, Layla? Veronique stepped closer, her eyes sparkling. What did you do with the glasses last night? So she knew I saw her glass trick, and now she's trying to set me straight. I don't know what you're talking about. I held her gaze without blinking. The only thing I know is that something happened with Nate at my birthday party, and I don't like it any more than you do. You're lying, Veronique hissed. We stood across from each other like 2 fighters before a fight. Tension hung in the room, so thick it felt like you could touch it. Girls! Nate's voice interrupted our confrontation. Please, not here. Veronique was the first to regain her senses. She stepped back, fixed her hair, and pulled on a smile. So, sure, honey. You need some peace. Layla's on her way out. Actually, Nate said slowly, I'd like you both to leave. I need to rest. The doctor said no excitement. Veronique looked as if he had stabbed her in the heart. You want me to leave? Not for long, he said softly. Go home, take a shower, get some rest. I'm not going anywhere. She hesitated, clearly not wanting to leave us alone. Okay, she said finally, but I'll be back tonight. And, Layla, she turned to me, we need to talk. A serious talk. Yes, I agreed. A talk is really needed. Veronique picked up her purse, kissed Nate on the forehead, and walked out of the room without looking back. I exhaled, only now realizing I'd been holding my breath. It was, Nate started. Intense, I finished for him, like it always was with Veronique. But you pulled through, he smiled weakly. It was the first time I'd ever seen anyone stand up to her like that. Me too, I admitted, all the more surprising that the someone was me. The morning after the hospital visit was gray and dank. A light rain drummed on the roof as I pulled up to my store. Despite my fatigue and emotional exhaustion, I decided to open today. Work had always helped me cope. Plus, a large wedding order had to be delivered in 2 days, and the arrangements needed preparation. As I parked, I immediately noticed something amiss. The window seemed darker than usual, even though the automatic lights were supposed to come on as the morning progressed. I quickened my step, pulled out my keys, and froze in front of the door. The lock had been picked. My heart thudded in my throat as I gently pushed the door open. What appeared before my eyes made me gasp. My store, my brainchild, my little paradise was completely trashed. Vases were smashed, flowers were ripped out of their pots and trampled, soil was strewn all over the floor, display cases with postcards and souvenirs were toppled, glass shelves were shattered. There was a strange odor in the air, a mixture of floral scents, damp earth, and something acrid, chemical. No, I whispered, taking a step inside. No, no, no. 5 years of work. 5 years of putting every penny I earned into this store. 5 years of coming here every morning with excitement and leaving with a sense of accomplishment. And now it was all destroyed. I walked slowly to the center of the room, stepping carefully over the shards and trampled flowers. The counter where the cash register usually stood was now empty. It had been stolen. That was the least of my losses, though. My gaze fell on the wall behind the counter. Where the photos of my best compositions used to hang, there was now a sign written in red paint. Be silent. One word, as succinct as a knife thrust, and leaving no doubt as to who was behind it. I sank down into the only surviving chair, feeling my legs wobble. Veronique. Veronique had done it, or ordered her to do it. Either way, the message was meant for me. As if to confirm my thoughts, the phone rang. Veronique's number. Yes? My voice sounded weak, like a sick person. Good morning, sister. Her voice, on the contrary, was cheerful and energetic. How are you? Did you stop by your nice little store yet? Why would you do that? I clutched the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. What are you talking about? The fake surprise in her voice sounded almost genuine. Almost. My store was trashed, Veronique, and I know you did it. A short pause, then a chuckle. What serious accusations, Layla? Do you have proof? Witnesses? Anything other than your paranoid fantasies? She was right. I couldn't prove anything. Besides, Veronique continued in a more serious tone, I'm a little busy with vandalism right now. My husband's in the hospital, in case you've forgotten. Poisoned. At your birthday party. I didn't poison Nate, I almost screamed. Of course you didn't. Her voice became softer, almost caring. I believe you, sis. But will the police and the insurance company? You don't have vandalism insurance, do you? That's a shame. I remained silent, shocked by her coolness. I'll tell you what, Layla, Veronique continued after a pause. Keep your mouth shut about what happened at your birthday party. No unnecessary theories, no accusations, and we'll chalk it up as an accident. For example, it's common food poisoning. Maybe then your problems will end with this little misunderstanding with the store. I can't believe it. Are you threatening me? I was shocked that this was actually happening. Me? Feigned surprise. No, sis. I'm just looking out for you. And for Nate, of course. What he needs right now is peace, not police investigations and headlines. You want him to get better too, don't you? Veronique, I've got to go, she interrupted. I'm going to the hospital. To see my husband. I'm sorry about the store. It's a real shame. She hung up, and I sat in the ruins, clutching the phone in my hand. Shock was replaced by anger, anger by fear, fear by determination. I couldn't let her intimidate me. Not this time. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning up the horrible mess and talking to the police. The young officer scrutinized the store, took pictures, and asked the standard questions. Did I have any enemies? Had I noticed anything suspicious in the last few days? Was anything of value missing? I answered honestly, but kept my suspicions about Veronique to myself. I didn't have any proof yet, and I didn't want to look crazy blaming my own sister. After the police left, I called the insurance company. As Veronique had suggested, I didn't have vandalism insurance. That meant all the cost of rebuilding would be on my shoulders. I locked up the vandalized store and went up to my apartment. I showered, changed, and decided to head back to the hospital. I needed to talk to Nate. He looked a little better in the room than he had yesterday, not as pale, more collected. When he saw me, he smiled weakly. Layla? He lifted himself up on the bed. It's good to see you. How are you feeling? I sat down next to him, looking around for signs of Veronique's presence. She's not here. Nate read my mind. She went home about an hour ago, said she'd be back tonight. I breathed a sigh of relief. Nate, something happened. My store was vandalized. His eyes widened. What? When? Last night. It was a total disaster. I summarized what I'd seen. And then Veronique called. She did it. She threatened me, Nate. Said if I didn't keep quiet about what happened at the birthday party, it would be worse. Nate pressed his lips into a thin line. I don't want to believe she'd do something like that. But honestly, I'm not sure about anything anymore. Did the doctors say anything new? I asked, changing the subject. Did they find out exactly what poisoned you? Partially. He lowered his voice, even though we were alone. It's some kind of rare plant toxin. They've sent samples to a specialized lab for a more precise analysis. Plant-based? I echoed. How can plants? You'd be surprised how many deadly plants grow in ordinary gardens, Nate said grimly. The doctor had mentioned that certain types of lily of the valley, foxglove, and oleander could cause symptoms like mine. I went cold. Lily of the valley. 2 weeks ago, Veronique came into my store and asked me at length about poisonous plants. I'd thought at the time that it was for some project at her ad agency. Nate, I said slowly, I think I know where to look for clues. In your house. Veronique was interested in poisonous plants a couple weeks ago. If she really planned it, there might have been traces of it. He hesitated, then nodded. Perhaps. But how do you get into the house? You don't have keys. Actually, I do, I smiled embarrassedly. Veronique gave me a spare set in case you lost yours. Said I was the most responsible person she knew. Ironic. Nate grinned bitterly. But even if you do get in, what are you going to look for? I don't know, I answered honestly. Any sign of poisonous plants, books about them, maybe notes, anything suspicious. I have a better idea. He straightened up, wincing in pain. Tell her you've come to pick up a few things for me. Pajamas, a toothbrush, a book. It'll feel more natural if Veronique comes back. That's a good idea, I agreed. What exactly do you need? Nate dictated a small list of things and explained where to find them. Then he added, Be careful, Layla. If Veronique really is behind all this, she's more dangerous than we thought. I nodded. feeling the adrenaline rush through my veins. The plan was risky, but I was willing to take the risk, for Nate's sake, and for me. Veronique and Nate's house was in the suburbs of Bedford, a neat two-story mansion with a manicured garden. I parked in the driveway, glancing around nervously. Veronique's car was nowhere to be seen, but that didn't mean she wasn't home. I stepped inside, listening. Silence. A perfectly clean hallway, not a speck of dust. The whole house looked like a page out of an interior design magazine. Spotless, sterile, and completely impersonal. Then, I went upstairs to the bedroom, trying to tread as quietly as possible, even though I knew I was alone. I found Nate's pajamas in the closet, his toothbrush and razor in the bathroom. Then went down to the study, a small room where Nate kept papers and books on auto mechanics. All the stuff was packed away, but I wasn't in a hurry to leave. I needed to find proof. I started in the kitchen, examining the cabinets and drawers. Nothing suspicious. The usual spices, tea, coffee. Then I moved on to Veronique's home office, a small room next to the living room where she sometimes worked from home. It was neat here, but not as sterile as the rest of the house. On the desk were papers, magazines, sample sales brochures. In a desk drawer, I found the first piece of evidence, a small paperback book entitled Poisonous Plants of North America. Many pages were bent, some paragraphs underlined. The pages on Lily of the Valley and Foxglove were especially marked. My heart beat faster. I snapped pictures of a few pages on my phone, trying not to move the book. As I continued my search, I came across a locked drawer at the bottom of the desk. There was no key in sight, but I remembered an old trick from my childhood Veronique, and I had learned how to open locks with stilettos when we wanted to get to our parents' candy stash. After a few minutes of fiddling, the lock gave way. Inside was a small box wrapped in a velvet cloth. I carefully unwrapped it and found an unlabeled vial of clear liquid. I felt the blood drain from my face. Veronique was really planning to poison me. I took a picture of the vial, then carefully put everything back in place and locked the drawer. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely manage the lock. When I straightened up, I remembered a conversation I'd had years ago. I was 14. Veronique was 18. She was getting ready to go to college and was sure she had a bright future ahead of her. "You'll never catch up to me, Layla," she said, sitting in front of the mirror, brushing her long hair. "I will always be one step ahead. I'll always be better." "I'm not trying to catch up to you," I replied quietly. "I just want to be me." She laughed, but there was no mirth in her laughter. "Being me? That's a luxury you can't afford, sis. Not with your humble talents. You will always be in my shadow, accept that." Her words hurt me then. I cried into my pillow at night, wishing I could prove her wrong. But the years went by, and Veronique was indeed always ahead. Better grades, prestigious college, a successful career, an enviable husband. And only the store became my own personal achievement, my own path. A small, modest success, but mine. Totally mine. I remembered how Veronique had reacted when I showed her the store after it opened. She had walked around the room with barely concealed disdain, touching the flowers with her fingertips as if she was afraid of getting dirty. "Nice," she said then. "Very provincial. If you like it, of course." "I like it," I replied with unusual firmness. "I like it very much." Something strange flashed in her eyes, a mixture of surprise and annoyance, as if she hadn't expected me to dare to have an opinion of my own. "Well," she shrugged, "I hope you can pay your rent. Do you know how many small businesses go bankrupt in the first year? About 80%. But I didn't go bankrupt. On the contrary, the store thrived. Slowly, gradually, but surely. And with every success I had, Veronique grew colder, more sarcastic. Now I knew she was jealous, envious of my little happiness, my independence. Jealous that I had finally found my own way, not connected to her. Deep in thought, I didn't immediately hear the sound of the front door opening. My heart sank into my heels when I realized Veronique was back, I barely had time to slip out of the study and pretend to walk down the stairs with a bag of stuff for Nate when she walked into the living room. Layla? She stopped, looking at me in surprise. What are you doing here? Hi. I tried to speak calmly. Nate asked me to bring him some things. I just packed it up. Veronique eyed me suspiciously, her eyes narrowing. And how did you get in the house? With the spare keys you gave me, I showed her the bunch. Remember? Oh, yeah. She set the bag on the table in the hallway. And what exactly did Nate need at the hospital? Pajamas, toiletries, a book. I picked up the bag. The usual hospital stuff. That's nice of you. Her voice was oozing sarcasm. Always willing to help, aren't you, sister? Just doing what I can. I headed for the door. I have to go. I have to take my stuff to the hospital. Wait, Veronique blocked my way. You didn't say anything to Nate, did you? No. I looked her straight in the eye. What was I supposed to say? She scrutinized my face, trying to determine if I was lying. Nothing, she said finally. Nate was just being a little weird today, asking questions about you and me. Maybe he's just bored being in the hospital, I shrugged. I'd start asking weird questions out of boredom, too. Veronique smiled, but the smile didn't touch her eyes. Probably. By the way, how's your store? Didn't take too much damage? It was a low blow and indirect admission of involvement, disguised as an innocent question. I felt my insides boiling, but I held back. It's a mess, I said. But I can handle it. I always have. Yeah, you've always been resilient. She stepped back, letting me pass. Say hi to Nate. Tell him I'll be there soon. I nodded and walked out, feeling her gaze burning into my back. Already in the car, when Veronique's house was behind me, I let myself exhale. I had succeeded. I had the evidence. Now, I had to decide what to do with it. The phone rang when I was halfway to the hospital. Mom. I hesitated, then answered it, putting it on speaker. Hi, Mom. Layla, honey. Her voice sounded worried. Veronique just called us. She said your store was trashed, and that Nate's in the hospital. What's going on? I sighed. Of course Veronique had already called her parents. Of course she made it look good. Yeah, Mom, it's true. The store was trashed, and Nate got poisoned at my birthday party. Poisoned? Oh my God! She gasped. Veronique said it was food poisoning from stale appetizers. That's it. Veronique was already forming the right version of events. It's not food poisoning, Mom, I said cautiously. The doctors say it's some kind of powerful toxin. You mean poison? Her voice shook. But how could that happen? I don't know, I lied. The police are looking into it. The police? My father's voice came through the phone. My mother must have put it on speaker. Veronique didn't say anything about the police. What else didn't she say? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. What do you mean, Layla? Mom asked. Veronique is very upset. Her husband's in the hospital, and you sound like you're accusing her of something. I'm not accusing anyone, I said tiredly. I just want to find out what happened. Look, Layla. My father's voice became sterner. I know you and Veronique have always had a complicated relationship, but now is not the time for your sisterly bickering. Now is the time to support Veronique. She could lose her husband. Typical. It's always been about supporting Veronique. Even now, when I was the victim of vandalism and her husband was poisoned at my birthday party, prioritizing her feelings. I remember Mom, Dad, I said. Support Veronique. As always. Don't start that again, Layla, Mom sighed. You know we love you both equally. A lie they repeated so often, they probably believed it themselves. Of course, Mom, I lied again. Look, I'm pulling up to the hospital. I'll talk to you later, okay? We'll be there tomorrow, Dad said. We need to support you both during this difficult time. Okay, I didn't argue. See you tomorrow. The conversation left a bitter taste in my mouth. Nothing had changed. Her parents still saw Veronique as a golden child in need of protection, and me as a clueless outsider. And they were sure to believe whatever version of events Veronique offered, even if it was absurd. 4 days later, Nate was released from the hospital. I went to pick him up, expecting to see Veronique there, but she wasn't. The nurse said his wife had called that morning to say she couldn't make it because of a work emergency. That struck me as odd. What work could be more important than a husband who'd just been discharged after being poisoned? Nate was sitting on the edge of the bed, already dressed and ready to be discharged. He looked better than he had in days, but he was still pale and noticeably thinner. "Veronique isn't coming," he said when I walked in. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, I was told." I shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. "She had an emergency." "Urgent work," he grinned bitterly. "Of course. Or she just doesn't want to see me." "Why not?" "We talked yesterday." He rose carefully, wincing slightly. "I said I wanted to be apart for a while, to think about our marriage." "Oh," was all I could manage to say. "I'm not sure I have a place to go," Nate continued. "Maybe I could get a motel room for a while." "You can stay at my place." The words came out before I could think. "I mean, if you want. The apartment's small, but there's a pull-out couch in the living room." Nate looked at me in surprise, then gratefully. "Are you sure? Veronique will be furious." "I've already seen her furious." I lifted my chin. "After trashing my store, it's hard to scare me with anything." "Thank you then." He smiled weakly. "I promise not to stay long. Just until I get back on my feet." On the way to my apartment, Nate told me how his last meeting with Veronique had gone. She'd been cold and distant, more concerned with what her acquaintances would say than with his well-being. When he'd talked about a temporary separation, she'd reacted not with grief or surprise, but with rage, as if he'd thwarted some plan of hers. "She's changed, Layla," Nate said, looking out the car window. "Not the same girl I'd grown to love." We got to my apartment above the store. Nate climbed the stairs slowly, clinging to the banister. I walked beside him, ready to pick him up if I needed to. When we passed the store, he stopped, looking through the glass door at the mess. "Jesus," he whispered. "Did she really do it?" "I can't prove it was Veronique," I replied. "But the writing on the wall is pretty eloquent." "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "I'm so sorry I didn't realize how dangerous." I finished for him. "I didn't realize either. Always thought she was just bossy and selfish. Never thought she could go this far." Back at the apartment, I helped Nate get settled on the couch, brought water and the medicine the doctor had prescribed. "Get some rest," I said. "I need to get down to the store, start cleaning. I want to open as soon as possible. The bills aren't going to pay themselves." "I'll help." He tried to get up. "No way." I held him back gently. "You need to rest. The doctor said no exertion for at least a week." "But I want to be useful," he insisted. "I can't just lie there and do nothing." "If you get better, you'll help me," I smiled. "In the meantime, rest." The next few days passed in a strange, but not unpleasant rhythm. I worked in the store, gradually restoring order, and Nate stayed upstairs, mostly resting, but sometimes coming down to keep me company. We talked awkwardly at first, then more and more openly. About Veronique, about our childhood, about his work, about my flowers. The third day after I was discharged, Nate felt well enough to start helping me at the store. Against my protests, he took to repairing shelves and display cases. "I'm an auto mechanic," he said, buttoning up the work overalls he'd brought from Veronique's house while she was away. "Working with my hands is the best therapy for me." He turned out to be much more skillful than I expected. In 2 days, he fixed almost all the broken shelves and racks, and on the third day, he took over the counter. I watched him, amazed at the concentration on his face, the dexterity of his fingers, the quiet confidence of his movements. "Thank you," I said, handing him the screwdriver. "You don't know how much this means to me." "It's the least I can do." He looked up from his work. "If it wasn't for me, your store wouldn't have been damaged." "It's not your fault," I objected. "You're just as much a victim as I am." Nate tapped the screwdriver on his palm thoughtfully. "You know what's weird? I lived with Veronique for 5 years, but only now I realize I didn't know her at all, or didn't want to know her. Ignored the red flags. What red flags? I asked, taking a seat next to her. Her controlling behavior, constantly checking my phone, the tantrums if I stayed late after work, the sarcastic comments about my friends until I stopped talking to them. He sighed. But worst of all, the way she talked about you. About me. I tensed. She always mentioned you with such a mixture of contempt and anxiety, as if you were both insignificant and a serious threat to her. It was weird. I nodded. Not surprised, but still hurt. That same day, the first unpleasant incident happened. One of my regular customers, Mrs. Parker, an elderly lady who ordered a bouquet for her living room every week, came not for flowers, but with accusations. I heard what happened, she said without looking me in the eye. Very unpleasant, of course. Yes, vandalism is terrible, I agreed, not sure what she was getting at. I'm not talking about vandalism, she tightened her lips. I mean what you did to your sister's husband. I froze. I'm sorry? Veronique told me all about it at our gardening club. Mrs. Parker shook her head. How you tried to seduce her husband, and when he rejected you, you put something in his drink. At his own birthday party. What a shame. I felt the blood drain from my face. It's a lie. An absolute shameless lie. Of course you'll deny it, she waved her hand. But Veronique is such a sweet, open girl. Why would she lie? Why? I almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. Maybe because she was the one who put the poison in the glass. Not to Nate, to me. Mrs. Parker stepped back, looking at me like I was crazy. You see? Now you're blaming your own sister. That's low, Ms. Reeves. Very low. She walked out, slamming the door loudly. I was left standing in the middle of the store, shaking with rage and humiliation. What happened? Nate came down the stairs where he was nailing up a new shelf. I told him about Mrs. Parker's visit. His face darkened. So, Veronique has started her campaign. A campaign? To smear your name. She talked about it yesterday when she called me. He shook his head. Threatened to tell everyone some made-up story about our affair if I didn't come home. And you didn't tell me? I was shocked. I didn't want to upset you. He ran a hand through his hair. I thought they were just empty threats. Obviously not, I said bitterly. Over the next few days, the situation only got worse. Several customers canceled orders. Someone wrote "disturbed" on the store window in red paint. A post appeared in a local Facebook group talking about an unscrupulous florist who poisoned her sister's husband out of jealousy. Although no names were mentioned, everyone in our small town knew who we were talking about. Nate was furious. This has to stop. I'll talk to her. No, I stopped him. It'll only make things worse. That's what she's looking for, a reaction, a scandal, attention. But we can't just sit back and let her ruin your reputation. Yes, we can. I was surprisingly calm. Because the truth always comes out. In the meantime, we'll work. We'll rebuild the store. We'll get our customers back. Show we're stronger than her lies. That evening, while sorting through boxes of old stuff looking for vendor catalogs, I came across a stack of my journals. I kept them from age 12 to 18, then abandoned them. Curiosity compelled me to open one of them, a small notebook in a green cover labeled 13 years. The first entry I read struck me. Today was to be my first school dance. I've been getting so ready. My mom helped me pick out a dress. I even asked Veronique to show me how to apply makeup. She agreed, even though she said it was a waste of time. No one would ask me to dance anyway. And then, when I was already completely ready, she accidentally spilled orange juice on my dress. Right before I went out. My mom said it was just an unfortunate coincidence, and Veronique didn't mean it. But I saw her face. She was smiling when I was crying. I flipped a few pages. Veronique helped me with my algebra homework again. I thought she really wanted to help, and I was so grateful. Then I got an F because all the solutions were wrong. When I told Veronique about it, she laughed and said I needed to be smarter and not trust anyone, not even her. especially her. I spent a few hours rereading old notes. Case after case, year after year, Veronique's systematic pesting, little cruelties, sabotage, manipulation. It all added up to a lifelong mosaic, a pattern of betrayal and jealousy. Why didn't I see it before? Why did I write off her behavior as just sisterly rivalry? Why let her hurt me over and over again? I closed the last journal. All these years I'd thought the problem was me, that I wasn't good enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough compared to Veronique. But the problem had always been her inability to enjoy my successes, her need to always be better, to always be the center of attention. The phone rang, snapping me out of my musings. Veronique. I hesitated, then answered. Yes? Hello, sis. Her voice was sweet as honey. How are you? How's your little store? What do you want, Veronique? I asked tiredly. Nothing much. She sighed, fake sigh. Just wondering if you've seen my husband. I think he's missing. You know damn well Nate's here. I wasn't going to play her games. He told you himself he wanted to be apart for a while. Yeah, but not with my sister. Her voice lost its sweetness, becoming cold and sharp as ice. You're out of line, Layla. No, Veronique. I felt a wave of anger rising inside me. You're the one who's crossing every possible line, spreading lies about me, ruining my business, threatening me. And that's after you tried to poison me. Poison you? She laughed. How dramatic! I just wanted to teach you a lesson, to make you sick, to embarrass you in front of your precious friends. Nothing fatal. My heart sank. She confessed. So easily, so carelessly. You really did put something in my glass, I whispered. Of course I did, she snorted. And you switched glasses with Nate. That's very noble of you, sis, letting my husband drink what was meant for you. You're sick, Veronique. I felt nausea coming up my throat. You need help. Me? She laughed again, but there was something broken in her laugh. You're the one who needs help. You're stealing my husband. You're ruining my life. No, Veronique, I interrupted her, feeling suddenly calm. You're the one who's been trying to ruin my life. Always. Ever since I was a little girl. I just never wanted to see it. A pause. Then, what are you going to do? Her voice sounded wary. Are you going to go to the police? You don't have any proof. Actually, I do. I thought about the photos I'd taken at her house, the vial of poison. But that's not the point. The point is, I'm not going to let you control my life anymore. What does that mean? There's a note of panic in her voice. It means I'm breaking up with you, Veronique. I said the words easily, as if I'd always known them, just never dared to say them out loud. No more family dinners, no more celebrations, no more pretend smiles. I'm not your sister anymore. You can't, she almost shouted. What will the parents say? What will people say? I don't care. And it was the truth. I will no longer live in fear of your opinion, your manipulation, your anger. My parents will never accept that. She sounded almost desperate now. They've always been on my side, always will be. You'll be alone. Better to be alone than with a sister like you. I took a deep breath. Goodbye, Veronique. And for the first time in my life, I hung up the phone without waiting for her answer. Nate was standing in the doorway, leaning against the jamb. I could tell by the look on his face that he'd heard enough. Are you okay? He asked quietly. No, I smiled, feeling oddly light. Not really, no. But I will be. The next morning, my mom called. Her voice was shaking with excitement. Layla, what have you done? Veronique is hysterical. She says you're tearing the family apart, stealing her husband. That's not true, Mom, I said calmly. Nate chose to leave her. I just offered him a roof over his head until he got better. But what does that look like? She was almost crying. What will people think? You have to stop this right now. Bring Nate home. Apologize to your sister. No, I said firmly. Veronique tried to poison me, Mom. She trashed my store. She's been spreading lies about me all over town. And you want me to apologize? You were always jealous of her. Mom's voice was accusatory. Always wanted what she had. That's not true. I felt tears coming to my eyes, but I held them back. I just wanted to be loved. By you, by Dad, by her. But you were too blind to love her. I realize that now. We're going to your place, Mom said firmly. We need to discuss this as a family. Your father is already calling the airline. Don't come. I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. I'm not changing my mind. I'm done with Veronique. I'm done with this toxic relationship. But we're a family, Mom exclaimed. A family is supposed to stick together. A family shouldn't poison each other, I said quietly. A family shouldn't ruin each other's lives. What Veronique and I have is not a family. It's abusive, Mom, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Mom burst into tears into the phone. I could hear Dad trying to calm her down as he picked up the phone. Layla! His voice sounded stern. You have to come to your senses. Veronique is your only sister. Yes, you've had complications, but… Complications? I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. Dad, she tried to poison me. She wanted to hurt me. That's not a complication. It's a crime. You can't prove it. He sounded unsure. Veronique says… Of course, Veronique says. I sighed. Veronique always says what you want to hear. And I've always been uncomfortable. Always been the problem. But you know what? I'm not going to apologize for existing anymore. I'm not going to cut corners to make Veronique feel better. I won't sacrifice myself for family peace. You're breaking your mother's heart. There was accusation in his voice. No, Dad. I could feel the resolve rising inside me, hard and unyielding. It was you who broke my heart. Years ago, when you decided that one daughter was worthy of love and protection and the other wasn't. I hung up the phone, feeling my hands shaking. Years of repressed emotions, years of silent acceptance of injustice. It all came out. I cried as I sat on the floor among the scattered diaries, evidence of systematic betrayal. I picked up my phone and blocked Veronique's number. Then I opened my contact list and did the same with my parents' numbers. Maybe someday I'd be ready to talk to them again. But not right now. Right now, I needed time to myself. Time to lick my wounds and gain strength. The autumn wind whipped the fallen leaves across the sidewalk as I opened the doors to my store. No, not just a store anymore. Layla's Flower Stories has become a small floristry studio with an annex for workshops. Is 6 months a long time or a short time? For me, those 6 months were a lifetime. A new life in which I could finally breathe fully. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined running an expanded business with an employee and regular masterclasses. After my breakup with Veronique and the scandal that swept through town, I was sure my store was doomed. But something amazing happened. People started coming in. First out of curiosity, then out of solidarity, and then because of the really high-quality work. The first impetus for expansion was a chance workshop for children from a local school. The teacher took the class on a field trip, and I gave an impromptu demonstration of how to make simple bouquets. The kids loved it. The parents loved it too, and soon I was getting requests for regular classes. That's how the idea of an annex for master classes was born. In those 6 months, not only my business changed, but Nate's as well. After almost a month of staying with me, where he helped with store renovations, he found a small apartment nearby. My divorce from Veronique took longer than expected. She kept dragging out the process, making unreasonable demands, threatening scandals. But 3 weeks ago, it was finally finalized. He was free. And he opened his own machine shop, small, in an industrial estate on the outskirts of Bedford, but entirely his own. Holt's Auto Service, said the simple sign above the entrance. When I'd first come to see his new place of business, I'd been struck by how much Nate had changed. It was as if he had grown a few centimeters. His shoulders were squared, and he had a confidence in his voice that wasn't there before. Nate and I became real friends. Every Wednesday, we met in a little cafe on the corner of Maple Street, shared news, advice, sometimes just silence over a cup of coffee. It was a quiet, cozy friendship built on mutual respect and support. The day was ordinary. Customers, orders, preparing for the evening workshop. By 5 o'clock, I was feeling pleasantly tired. Alice had left early to study for an exam, and I was alone, laying out the materials for the master class. The bell jingled, and I looked up with my usual smile for visitors. The smile froze on my lips. Standing in the doorway was Veronique. She still looked flawless, perfect hair, expensive coat, high-heeled shoes, but something had changed in her face. There were wrinkles around her eyes and a tired look in her eyes. "Hi, sis," she said, taking a step inside. I straightened up, feeling my shoulders tense. "Veronique, what are you doing here? Can't I visit my own sister?" She tried to smile. "You have a... nice. Expanded, I see." "Thank you." I kept a wary expression. "But still, why did you come?" Veronique sighed. "I came to apologize, Layla." I blinked, not believing my ears. "Apologize?" "Yes." She walked further into the store. "Yeah, been doing a lot of thinking lately, about us, about what happened. Maybe I was really, too harsh with you." "Too harsh?" I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "You tried to poison me, Veronique. You trashed my store. You spread lies about me all over town." "I wasn't myself." She shook her head. "The divorce with Nate, the problems at work. I just snapped. But now that I've been in therapy, I've realized a lot of things. And I want to make it right." She sounded convincing, with the perfect dose of remorse in her voice. The old Layla would have believed her, would have been thrilled to have a chance to reconnect. But I wasn't that Layla anymore. "What exactly do you want to fix?" I asked calmly. Veronique froze, her eyes narrowing. "You're not happy that I came to reconcile?" "I don't believe you came to make up," I said honestly. "You haven't tried to contact me once in 6 months. You haven't sent me a single text or called me. And now you show up to apologize? Something happened, Veronique. Something that made you need me." She pulled back, her face contorted for a moment, but then regained a look of remorse. "You were always perceptive, sister. Yeah, you're right. Something happened. And what was that?" "I got fired." She said it like she was announcing the end of the world. "That Meredith woman was pushing me around. She made me look incompetent in front of clients, stole my ideas. And now she's taking my place." "I'm sorry," I said. And it was partly true. "It's not just that." She shook her head. "Nate took half of our savings in the divorce. I can't afford the house anymore, so I have to sell. And also, his parents are on his side. Can you believe it? They're saying it's my fault the marriage broke up. That's it. The real reason she's here. Not remorse, not a desire to repair the relationship. She'd lost her job, her money, and her parents' support. And now she was looking for a new support. Me. "What do you want from me, Veronique?" I asked her bluntly. "Support?" She looked me in the eye. "You've always been there for me, Layla. Always there for me, no matter what happened. I need my little sister." Something clenched in my chest. A part of me, that little girl who always wanted her big sister's approval, almost gave in, almost reached out my hand in response. But then I remembered everything. Childhood humiliation, teenage betrayals, adult cruelty, and the poisoned glass of champagne. "No," I said quietly but firmly. "I won't be your support system anymore, Veronique. I won't be your shoulder to cry on, your backup when everyone else has turned away. You have no remorse for what you did to me. You're just in a difficult situation, and you're looking for someone to hold on to." Her face changed instantly. The mask of remorse fell away, revealing a familiar expression of cold fury. "You refuse to help your own sister?" "I refuse to be used again," I corrected. "There's a difference. After all I've done for you?" She raised her voice. "I've always protected you, always been there for you." "No, Veronique." I shook my head. "You never protected me. You controlled me, used me, you humiliated me, and almost killed me." That's not love. That's not sisterhood. That's a toxicity I'm finally rid of. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Well, she finally said, that's it. Goodbye, Layla. I hope you'll be happy in your little world of flowers and a traitorous husband. He's not a traitor, I said calmly. And he's not my husband. He's my friend. Something you never seem to have. Veronique turned and walked out, slamming the door loudly. The bell rang desperately, as if protesting this treatment. I took a deep breath, feeling strangely light. I'd known this moment would come one day. Veronique wasn't the type to let go easily. But I hadn't expected to be able to stay so calm, so sure of my decision. 2 days later was my birthday, 28 years. Last year, that day was the beginning of a nightmare, a turning point that turned my life upside down. This year, I decided to celebrate it in a new way. No big party, no formal invitations, just close friends, a cozy evening in my renovated apartment above the store. Alice helped decorate the room with garlands and balloons. Kate made the cake, not perfect, a little crooked, but made with love. Nate brought a bottle of good wine and a gift wrapped in plain brown paper. The evening passed in warm conversation, laughter, memories of funny incidents in the store and workshop. No dramas, no hidden resentments, no fake smiles. Just sincerity and the warmth of true friendship. When the guests dispersed, I was alone in the quiet apartment. On the table were the remnants of the cake, unfinished glasses, and a vase of wildflowers. The very flowers I'd always loved, despite Veronique's taunts. I went to the dresser, pulled out the bottom drawer, and pulled out a small box. Inside was the only picture I had left of Veronique, a picture taken years ago when I was 8 and she was 12. It showed us smiling, embraced, two sisters against the backdrop of my grandmother's blooming garden. Back then, there was no rivalry, no jealousy, no manipulation. Or maybe I was just too young to notice them. I stared at the picture for a long time, remembering the little girl I once was. Naive, open-minded, hungry for love and approval. I remembered how I wanted to be like my big sister, how I strived to earn her approval, how I cried nights when I didn't get it. Then I stood up, walked over to the trash can, and resolutely dropped the picture inside. Not with anger, not with resentment, just with the realization that this part of my life was over. It was time to move on without the weight of the past. 28 years old. An age when many people already have a clear plan for life. Established relationships, certainty. I had none of that. Just a store, a handful of real friends, and the newfound freedom to be myself. And you know what? That was more than enough.